Today, on Energy Contact, we're designed to roll with the punches. We're not made to not get hurt, we're made to get hurt and to bounce back. To maintain equilibrium first and foremost, but to know how to regain it if we should slip up a little bit. Today, we're going to see what your chakras and your aura have to do with keeping you resilient. So bounce back into a comfortable seat for the next half hour, because that's what's coming up right now on Energy Contact. Hello, and welcome to Energy Contact. My name is Joseph Willenbrink. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the production staff here in the studio for helping me get my message out to you. Energy Contact is a series that I'm presenting to you as a public service. It's about attaining perfect health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and realizing your full potential. It's designed to present you a new way of looking at yourself, and a new way of looking at the world around you. We're talking about things that have to do with making an energetic contact with yourself internally and with your environment. There's no difference between the body, the mind, the spirit, the emotion, the intellect, the ego. There's no difference between mass and energy. These things are all exactly the same. There is something about us that loves to separate and categorize, analyze. Take one little piece out and put it under a microscope and think from that we know everything. But in fact, all that health and growth and self-improvement we're talking about take place when we do just the opposite. It happens when we put these things together. When we make an energetic contact between the physical world and the unseen one. We're presenting on these programs a brand new paradigm. A brand new paradigm that's thousands of years old. We're presenting extraordinary topics for ordinary people. And let's move right ahead with that. Let's bring up a slide. Everyone please understand that I am not a doctor. This show is not a medical show, it's not a medical talk show, medical advice show, anything like that. Couldn't be further from it. Now I might call myself an energy healer, a chakra healer, things like that. But state, federal, and local governments absolutely do not. They call me no such thing, and it's important to understand that. There's a lot of important information on your screen right now. Please read all of that, if you will, with your full attention. But when you've got it down, now would be a great time to locate a pencil and paper. Now here's why you want to do that. At the end of the show, we're going to run some credits, and on those credits, there is going to be contact information for me. Now, I invite and encourage you to contact me. I'm sort of hoping that something I have to say with you today will inspire you to want to do that. But in order to contact me, you're going to need that contact information. In order to get it, you're going to need a pencil and paper. There'll be plenty of time to jot that stuff down when the credits roll, if you got your pencil and paper ready. All right, let's come back up here. Today's show is show number 74. And if you're tuning in for the first time today, well, thanks and welcome. These shows are sequential. They build. So we're talking about things today that we've introduced and defined and explained on previous shows. So there's some ramp-up stuff, some up-to-speed things that you will have missed out on. However, I do my very best to make sure that every show has a lot of value on a standalone basis. So you'll get a lot out of what we have going on today. However, if what you see today piques your interest and is your first time joining me or one of your first times, well, please look around, because there will be earlier programs airing at later times. They'll either be re-airing right here on this station, or they'll be on at different days and different times in different areas. And if you look for them, I'll appreciate it. All right, and now it's time for me to introduce my co-host to you. Let's get my buddy Slim. There's my buddy Slim on camera right there. This is my pal Slim, and Slim is here for a reason. Since we're investigating what it is that the energy contacts in the physical self, we have to understand a couple of things about a couple of things, don't we? We have to understand something about energy, and this program is certainly all about energy. But all that energy out there somewhere in some abstract place does us no good at all. It does us no good until we bring it into focus, into contact with something. My pal Slim is here to help us understand what that thing is that the energy contacts. Remember, a body without energy is just a corpse. And energy without a body, well, it might be any one of a number of cool things, but none of them are human. All right. Previously on Energy Contact, we have been talking about your chakras and your aura. We've been looking at invisible things, and we have seen that what is visible and what is invisible have absolutely nothing to do with what is real and what is unreal. Matter doesn't matter. It's just a projection. It's a hologram, an optical illusion. It's that invisible world of wavelengths and frequencies and vibrations. That's all that's important. That's all that's real. But within this physical world, we've seen that everything sort of looks alike. Everything is modeled after another thing. We're in a world of scale models. We've seen atoms that look like solar systems and mass that acts like waves and beams of light that acts like matter. All sorts of things like this. And even though, in fact, there is only one thing, this physical world appears to be dualistic. Everything here is in sets of two. You got zeros and ones, one or the other, either or. You got visible versus invisible, yin versus yang, black versus black, white, male versus female, invisible versus visible, balance versus imbalance, good versus evil, life versus death, health versus sickness. The list is endless. It goes on. And among those pairs of opposites are the internal forces and the external forces. The internal forces we've looked at, the things that animate us, breath, pulse, frequency, vibration, wave. And the external forces, the things that come at us from the outside, push and pull us around a little bit. Gravity, energy, entropy, the bumps and bruises, the kisses and hugs of life, which are all acting and interacting and iterating with those internal forces, all in a constant balance. Now, we've seen that the energy of those external forces includes all sorts of invisible things. Electricity, radio waves, wireless internet waves, cell phone signals, keyless car entry things. This is another infinite list. They're all over the place. And we've seen that chakras and nadis and prana, kundalini shakti, these things are among the internal forces that we have at our disposal. And the frequencies of all these things lie somewhere upon what science calls the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, our investigation of that has shown us that there's a whole lot going on in this universe that your eyes aren't seeing. We've seen one thing for sure that's real, though. We've seen that invisible body intellect. We've seen those same materials in our brains. We were always taught that they were brain things, the things that give us thought, memory, reason, recall, logic, intellect, intelligence. We've seen that all those things are in fact in every cell of our body. They permeate every cell of our body. They saturate it. Our body then is just an unreal physical projection of that invisible but very real body intellect. We know now too that all these forces, these pairs of opposites, somehow manage to keep each other in balance. And their balance has something to do with holding the key to life and death, to sickness and health, attraction and repulsion, order and chaos. But the law of gravity says that things don't balance. They fall down. And the law of entropy says that things don't fall together, they fall apart. So to be healthy and happy and growing, all those things we want to do, we have to successfully deal with all that, don't we? And that brings us to today. We've seen ourselves already as atoms, and we've seen ourselves as cells. We've seen ourselves as matter, light waves, energy, vibrations. Well, today, we're going to be looking at ourselves as ecosystems. Ecosystems inside other ecosystems, interacting with yet other ecosystems. Systems that must remain in balance, both internally within ourselves and externally with our environment. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, every way. Now, we want to see where your chakras and your aura fit into that picture and why it matters. And knowing that, we want to see what we can do to maintain a healthy balance in our life and how we can restore ourselves if that balance should slip up a little or if we suffer a little trauma. And by the way, if we are just one thing, then we want to figure out what it is that we want to balance with. What is it that maintains that balance? What is it that leaves us when we lose it? As we've begun to study chakras, we've seen that they are the missing component in our physical worldview of things. And we're beginning to understand them a little better. But this new understanding in itself is not the goal. The goal is to get to what all this aura, chakra, internal, external balance business has to do with your health, your growth, your happiness, your self-improvement, and realizing your full potential. But for now, for today, we're just looking at a little physics and a little biology, the hard science of what's behind it all. And it's all very basic, as we're seeing. It's as basic and scientific as E equals MC squared. And we want to appreciate it in that way. We're understanding esoteric things analytically, looking at mysticism through scientific eyes. We're preparing ourselves for the detailed one-by-one look at each individual chakra that we're preparing to undertake over the next couple of shows. But please keep in mind that you don't want to get caught up in all the analysis. The analysis, the knowledge, without the wisdom behind it, will take you away from your goal rather than towards it. Whew. All right, so that's where we're headed today, a lot to do. But first, we've reached the part of the show where we get to pause for a second, where we get to take a deep breath and take a moment to relax, because it's our time where we get to take our virtual field trip, our journey in our mind's eye. And for today, we're just going to visualize that you're sitting around your house, and maybe you're a little bit bored. You kind of glance at the floor and you notice a rubber band there. So you pick it up and you start to play with it. You stretch it and snap it, twiddle it around your fingers. Maybe you do that thing where you wrap it around and shoot it against the wall a couple of times. And just pick it up and fidget with it for a while. As the day goes on, you carry it around with you. Put it in your pocket, take it out from time to time, and just stretch it and snap it. Just do whatever nervous habit comes up. For a while with that rubber band, everything is just fine. But after some time, you start to notice that the rubber band isn't quite returning to its original shape anymore. It seems to have lost something. Even though you haven't taken anything out of it, it's a little bit stretched and deformed. But still it functions okay, and since you're just sort of playing with it anyway, you continue to do so. Now more time passes, and after another while, you stretch the rubber band a little bit, and this time it breaks. That's no big problem. You just get it, tie it together. Now this rubber band looks ugly and it's got a big knot in it, but it still does basically what a rubber band does. And so you keep messing with it. After yet another while, it breaks again. And as you get ready to tie it, you just notice that it's ready to break in 4 or 5 other places too. So you realize there's no point now in trying to repair it. It's done. It may be made of rubber, but over time and repeated traumas, it's finally been pushed beyond the point of repair. All right, hold that thought. The physicist sees us of consisting of atoms. The biologist says we're made up of cells. Who's right? Well, they both are. Cells are made up of atoms. As lay people, we tend to think of cells and atoms as very similar things, don't we? Both a couple of little tiny things that are too small for us to see. But they are immensely different. While these atoms that we've discussed at length on Energy Contact are all identical, one carbon atom is the same as any other, cells are all different. And unlike atoms, cells are alive, and life requires a perception of the environment and an interaction with it. So there's no cell life without an environmental signal. Any biologist will tell you that. So there's a constant balance going on between every cell and the environment. It's an ecosystem. Furthermore, cells are smart. If you take a couple of cells and put them under a microscope, and you put something toxic or poisonous near them, they will move away. If instead you take a couple of cells and put them on that slide, and you put something nutritious or nurturing towards them, they will move towards it. So cells have choice, and that process of choice brings us to the binary, the dualistic appearance of this unreal physical world. When we made that leap from quantum atoms to cells, like it or not, we leapt into the world of dualistic illusion. And now here we are, in that world of zeros and ones, one or the other, either or, attraction or repulsion, raga devesha. And we experience this world in terms of happy or sad, hot or cold, healthy or sick, alive or dead, pleasure or pain, and on it goes. That's the world that cells live in. It's the world of internal forces versus external forces. It's an ecosystem. And in that world, cells are constantly choosing. The choices that this big U makes, this whole U makes, as a matter of fact, are basically just an agglomeration of the 50 trillion choices that your 50 trillion individual cells are making. Each one of them is a microcosm of you, another scale model. And so, life iterates. It's the internal forces and the external forces, and they're in a constant state of balancing and rebalancing. Everything takes place relative to the environment. Now, also unlike atoms, cells, as living things, are not eternal. They injure, and they wither, and they die. But wait, our goal is life and health and growth, isn't it? These cells, like everything else, well, they're mostly holes in the physical sense with no substance to speak of. What they're composed of is energy, and while cells die, energy is immortal. Now, there's no good energy or no bad energy. We've seen that on Energy Contact. The same electricity in your house that gives you light and warmth and all of your creature comforts and stuff will electrocute you in a heartbeat. Just like the same water that gives life to a thirsty person is the same water that will drown another person. It doesn't turn evil. The energy is the same. The variable is you, the only variable. Everything is environmental. It's situational. Now, nothing happens in a vacuum in this dualistic world either. So your cells are built from these internal forces, but all the while, they're constantly bathed in invisible forces from the outside. So, I guess, in another way, they're built by external forces too. And through all of this, those cells have enough awareness, have enough intelligence to make decisions. Binary ones. They can sense nutrition and operate in the mode of health and growth and happiness and self-improvement, or they can function in protection mode. Fear, danger, fight, flight, freeze. Now, this danger mode is an instinct, a natural instinct, but it's instilled in us to protect us for very brief moments, to survive immediate dangers. But many of us live in that place 24/7. And then we wonder why we don't feel good. It's a physical world choice. But we've seen over the past few energy that because mass and energy are the same, there really is no physical world. It's correct to say that there is no mass. There's just frozen energy. It's this stuff here. It's energy that's really too stupid to vibrate quick enough to maintain its real and invisible form. Now, this thick energy that we call us lives in the world that is bathed in the forces of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're swimming around in these things like fish in a big energetic fishbowl, and there's no real boundary between where our environment ends and where we begin. In other words, there's no real difference between the water in the fishbowl and the water in the fish. So, we've got the forces that are working from within us and the forces outside of us working upon us. And the outside things are pressuring us. They're pushing us in. It's okay. It's supposed to be like that. And we push back. One of those constant forces at work is entropy. And entropy is important to understand because it is the law of nature that says everything is falling apart. So if you are doing nothing right now, you're falling apart. Right now, to pull yourself together and to keep yourself that way, you're going to have to do something. It's going to take some effort. And like everything in this physical world, entropy is neither good nor evil. It just is. And like gravity, it's invisible. You can't draw a picture of it. A surgeon can cut you open and look around all day. He will not find any entropy. And like that electricity, like that water that we just looked at, like everything else in this physical world, the good and the bad that entropy does is just a function of how we relate to it. Entropy itself operates in the realm, in the wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, what works with entropy to prevent us from disintegrating, from falling apart, is whatever that thing is that gives us balance. It's an internal force, and we're going to find out what it is just in a moment. It's the only thing that will keep that rubber band from snapping back, stretching and snapping continuously without deforming and without breaking. So here we are, a model of infinity perhaps. The same way our cells are the scale model of us. The same way we've seen that our atoms are scale models of the solar system. The solar system, which is itself a scale model of the entire universe, at least as best as we can figure. So everything in the visible world is a scale model of something else. Really, what we are is just a bunch of nothings floating around other nothings inside invisible fields of something. Complex systems. Complex systems inside other complex systems, like Russian nesting dolls, but interdependent, an ecosystem. And more importantly than that, all nothing. Which means that all that really matters are the fields of something. Which in turn means that we want to look at the fields of something. But we can't. They're invisible. But we can get close. Let's bring up our slide, and what we will see is a model. This is a model of the electromagnetic spectrum. That's what's on the top half of your screen there. It is the universe of energy fields, or at least about as much as we know about. We can see from it that there are a lot of very real things going on in the universe which our physical senses have no perception of whatsoever. And we know that because of the entire universe of wavelengths going on in you and through you and out of you right now. All you can see is that tiny little section in the middle, that little white section with the red circle around it. The other 99.99999% of everything going on in the universe is completely and entirely unintelligible to you. Even of that visible spectrum, it's ostensibly made up of the 7 colors of the rainbow. But the colors aren't real. There is only pure white light. The color is just a perception. It's reality bent through that prism there. And when it bends, it fragments into the appearance of the colors of the rainbow. It was Isaac Newton who figured that out. All right, let's come back up here. Now, you don't even know that all this stuff is happening. It happens unaware to us, but it has a profound and a potentially very traumatic effect upon you. And whether you feel the electromagnetic spectrum or not, it's still your responsibility to protect yourself. Who else is going to do it? It's your job to take whatever these waves put through you and snap back to retain or regain your form through it all. To be happy and to be healthy and to grow, we need to balance all of these internal and external waves from this EMS, from this electromagnetic spectrum, which are in constant motion. They never get tired, and they are eternal. They're immortal, yet delicately balanced, and it's constantly shaping and reshaping and flowing and fluxing through this empty nothing that you call you. Now, all the while that's happening, you've got these chakras spinning about, and they're constituting the business end of the internal forces. And while we mention chakras, maybe we should take a second to stop and look at them. Let's bring up our next slide. We have hundreds and hundreds of chakras in us, but these are the main 7. See that fellow on the left there with the springs on him? He is a schematic model of sorts. You'll notice that the middle 5 of those main 7 chakras have a front and a back, and they point out horizontally, parallel to the earth and parallel to each other. The top and the bottom one are vertical. They do not have a front and a back, and they are perpendicular to the earth. In a way, they're the front and the back of each other. Now notice the colors of those chakras. Its 7 main chakras each have their own colors, and they're the exact same rainbow array of colors that you just saw from the electromagnetic spectrum. And each of these chakras has its own geometric shape as well. Now all of these things are ordered. They're on purpose. They are not random, and they are not accidental. And your health, growth, self-improvement, happiness, and the realization of your full potential or lack thereon depend upon how they balance, or the lack of their balance. Let's see what all this has to do with our aura. Let's go immediately to our next slide. We've seen that we don't really have an aura. We have a series of bodies, one physical body, and another 6 or so that are more subtle, that is more etheric, less thick. They're invisible, at least to most people, but very real. Now, as it happens, each of these 7 main chakras correspond to one and only one of these bodies. So there's a one-to-one correspondence that we'll see a lot in the future. We can see here that the subtle bodies give the aura a series of layers like an onion. But what this picture cannot show you is that those layers sort of flux and shimmer like the wavy lines do down the road on a hot day. And some people can see that. And oh, by the way, There's no difference between the physical body and your subtle bodies. All right, let's come back up here. So these chakras are constantly spinning, and that spinning generates an energy field, an internal force. And we have found it. We have found that invisible thing that keeps the ecosystem in balance, that provides the resilience that we need to survive. And it does so at a cellular level. Our chakras have to do with preserving what balances with what in ways that we will understand in a lot more detail over the next couple of episodes. Over the last couple of episodes, we've seen all sorts of models, haven't we? We've seen solar systems, MRI machines, flying magnets, electrons, rubber bands, all as models of other things, and all very valid scientific models, very illustrative. But our model doesn't stop there. We're also models of the Earth. And the Earth, like us, is an ecosystem. It's an agglomeration of atoms and cells just like we are. And it is also amazingly resilient. But like us, you mess with one cell at a time for long enough, and pretty soon you've messed up the whole system. So this is what the ecological balance of nature is all about. Our bodies are a model of the Earth, and the Earth is a model of our bodies. And so neither one can exist without the other. For a cell to live, it has to have an interaction with its environment. When the balance of a molecular system is messed up, the universe sends in a new organism. That's sort of the way the universe works. Your body intellect does the same thing, and so does the Earth. That's what ecology has to do with. Now, our bodies, bringing it back to our bodies can stand a series of assaults from the external forces over and over again if we take care of our internal forces. It's our responsibility to do that. It's our job to take the responsibility for all the things we can control. But even that only goes so far. And that's why the healthiest and the most spiritual person in the world won't survive a plane crash or a bullet. There's a point of entropy upon which, or beyond which, order cannot be restored. But let's come back to you and me for a minute and the ecosystem. What we do to take care of ourselves will determine what our chakras are doing. And what our chakras are doing will determine the external forces, and what the external forces are doing will determine how we take care of ourselves. Our chakras are involved with how we do that, and therefore they are fundamental to our health, our growth, our happiness, our self-improvement, and the realization of our full potential. And that's what we're going to learn a whole lot more about next time. But for today, we're out of time. Thank you for joining me. I wish you peace and positive energy and a healthy life in Energy Contact.
I'm gonna drive